What makes you laugh? What makes you want to share something? What makes you want to comment on something? Don't look at social for a second, but just take the time to understand, like, what do you want to see on social? What makes you laugh? What makes you want to share something? What makes you want to comment on something? What's something that gives you like an emotional reaction? Having those like creative sessions and bringing examples to the table, like what brands are you really loving right now? Why are you loving them? Why did you just follow them? Why did this content make you like giggle? Those are maybe some of the top three things that brands should be doing right now.
Jasmine, I am thrilled to have you on Building Brand Advocacy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. It's been a long time coming.
I know for the audience out there, we have been trying to plan this for a long time.
Yeah.
So this is going to be great because I am so excited about what we're going to chat about because I think it's something that is a misunderstood topic and not many people really actually know the nitty gritty of what you do. So before we get into it, do you want to just give us a bit of an intro and just tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Well, hello, everyone. I am Jazmin Griffith. I consider myself a multi hyphenate creative. I've worked in social for the 10 past years. I own my own social listening studio, which is called queloque. We help brands kind of uncover the insights within their data. But I'm also a corporate girly. So currently I'm a social insights manager for an agency called 71 West. We work with hospitality brands to really just kind of understand their luxury portfolio of brands and build out reporting, social listening, influencer, paid, own, earn. And I'm also a content creator. So I've been creating content for the last 4 or 5 years, both on Instagram and TikTok, but been leaning more into like LinkedIn and the B2B space as well. So multi hyphenate is what I like to call myself.
It's a great title. I'm definitely stealing that. You are a busy girl, and I'm totally with you on LinkedIn being, I think actually a lot of people are moving towards LinkedIn these
Yeah,
days. It's,
it's a
yeah,
it's a cool platform.
yeah. Okay, right. Let's dig in. I mean, like I just said, I don't think social listening is fully understood. So let's just, from your perspective, what does social listening data really mean to you? And how does it kind of go beyond, how is it different, I suppose, to social media metrics or monitoring?
It's so interesting because people always ask, like, what is social listening? And I hate to be the one that gives the obvious answer, but I'm like, it's exactly what it is. It's like, it's listening to social, but not just social, it's listening to just the world in general, news, the industry, blogs. The interesting thing is a lot of brands now and agencies are kind of clumping social listening with social analytics and social intel all in one. The difference is social analytics is it's just data. It's just I'm looking at the data, I'm looking at owned data, meaning I'm only looking at my data. And social listening is a different piece of that because it's yes, it's own data, but it's mostly trends online. It's diving deep into the industry. If you are a food and beverage brand, I'm not just listening to what's going on with myself, but I'm looking at what my competitors are doing, what's happening in the TikTok space. I'm reading Substack channels. I'm being a part of Facebook groups. And then from there, you almost kind of have to put your like strategist hat on because it's like, what does this mean? Or what is this so what? The perfect example that I give people all the time is everyone knows the Super Bowl commercial with Sarah V. And people are like, where did that come from? Where their analysts spent so much time scraping Reddit and they found this insight, this nugget where people thought Michael Sarah owned Sarah V. It wasn't true, but it was something that they were like, we can build something off of that. That's exactly what social listening is. There were so many people that thought that Michael Sarah actually owned Sarah V that they built a whole Super Bowl campaign behind it. And it was the number one campaign. So social listening allows you to kind of think about the data in a very, very different way. And it allows you to use those insights for different things, for campaigns, for new content, for coming out with a new product, influencers and creators that we work with. And so I think that's like one of the biggest misconceptions behind it because people clump it together into a role, but majority of the times it's its own. It really can take a couple of members on the team to really kind of build that out. And it's just more than just data.
It's a great answer. I didn't actually know that story about the Sarah V campaign either. That's fascinating. And so that came from, did you say Reddit?
It came from Reddit. It came from, there's an article, I think, on Age or Adweek about it. But yeah, ultimately, their analysts kind of like scraped the internet and they spent a lot of time on Reddit. And there was this, and the thing about an insight is it doesn't always have to be true. You know,
Okay.
what people think it has to be, it doesn't always have to be true. It just has to be like a thought and opinion that something has. And that happened to be a very popular opinion that people were like, wait, Michael Cera owns it. And they got him on board and ended up being this really cool and this really dope campaign. And at the end, he came out and was like, guys, I don't own like Cera. So that was like a joke. It was like, the human part about it that was like, wait, you got me. And they built all these activations around it. So yeah.
Amazing. And obviously, you've built your agency around this. I'd love to just know a little bit more about the agency and like kind of what does like a typical day in the life of you as the founder getting into the data, what does that look like for you?
Let's be honest and let's be transparent here. So my agency is something, it's new, right? No one tells you how hard it is to build an agency from scratch for anyone that's listening. Okay. It is very, very hard. So I commend people like Brett and, AJ, they build like Creator Imagine, the Creator Economy, because I'm like, for you guys to do something like this is insane. And so for me, I use it as my freelance business, but my ultimate goal truly is to continue to retain more and more clients. And so my model is kind of simple. I come in and I create social listening reports or social analytic reports, but I also kind of do newsrooms. So what newsrooms are is we ultimately are, it's kind of similar to my Scroll and Tell newsletter. I'm kind of putting together a newsroom of what's going on in pop culture, right? But far beyond that, what are some communities that are trending? What are some formats? What are some edits? And then kind of tailor that to the client that I'm working with. So ultimately, it's like, okay, all of this is great. Yes, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey got engaged. What does that mean for me? What kind of content can I do for this? What is the so what behind it? And so I kind of build out those newsrooms for clients as well. So my day to day, it fluctuates because I do work a 9 to 5. So a lot of the business that I'm doing, it's either like before 9, after 5 kind of thing. I create content within the day. I do have the opportunity to kind of work remote, but a lot of the time is building content on LinkedIn, but also kind of being that consultant and that thought leader for a lot of people because social listening is so new. And I spoke at a panel a couple of weeks ago. I mean, a couple of months ago, and I talked about social listening and I asked a simple question like, how many people use social listening or know what no social listening is? And it was 50 people in the room and maybe like 6 people raised their hand. And I was like in shock. It's still very new. It's still very fresh. So I kind of want to be one of those first people to kind of be that consultant in the room for some of these big Fortune 500 companies and kind of show them that intelligence and social listening is very different than metrics and monitoring and looking at paid ads. They're very different on the side to side. So that's kind of like what my day to day is. Like I said, it's still like an up and coming agency. I'm trying to spend a lot of time more so like pitching clients and pitching brands, but I really want to be just like a thought leader and show people like there's a lot of opportunity in space and the things that brands want to accomplish. It can happen through just social listening if you kind of take the time to invest into it.
Yeah, it's so interesting because like I mean, you're saying it being a new thing and only like a small handful of people like putting their hands up to say they're doing it. Like for me, like, I mean, previous to doing this, I had my own agency, social media. And again, like I knew it was a thing, but we weren't doing it.
Yeah.
And do you think it's because it's a resource thing and a time thing? And like, if you think about social media teams, they're already pretty stretched and, we don't, I mean, do you think that's why people aren't doing it, or is it just a lack of education of how powerful it is?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think people have been doing it. They just don't realize they have been doing it. when you're like, when you're looking at skimming, we'll go through the 5 C's, but when you're like skimming through comments and you're looking at what the comments are saying, what people don't realize is it's a part of that is like community management, but a lot of that is truly social listening. It's taking those comments and doing something with it. The second piece, I do think it's a resource piece because I think a resource and education piece, because I think a lot of brands and agencies feel like one, they have to have an expensive social listening tool in order to be able to
Yeah.
accomplish, which in some form or fashion, yes. But what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of these social listening tools don't allow you, you really only scrape the surface. I'm really only looking at like Twitter and X. TikTok has an API, you can't really listen to it. The agency or the tools that do have that API, it's very like a minimal sample. Instagram, it's very similar. You can't listen to niche spaces like Facebook groups and Slack. And so I think it's an education piece, but I also think it's a resource piece because these tools are very expensive. And to have to hire someone that, that understands how to leverage this tool, that can go in and kind of tweak a query, that can go in and, look at all these negative mentions and be able to pull insights from that. That's a skill that a lot of people just don't have at the moment. And I think, like I
Yeah.
said, agree, it's that education piece. I think Jack Appleby, hopefully I'm saying his name. If I'm not, I'm so sorry. He made a post. He was like, what are we doing with social listening like data? Like, how are we actually using it? So the fact that that's a question, it's because it's still an education piece. People don't know what to do with that data. Like, great, sentiment was negative. so what? So I think it's a combination of those three.
Yeah. I also think it's really what you said about using third party platforms to help brands do it. And I think actually you're right, because it's also the same when it comes to third party tools that just kind of like scrape the data just from like reach, impressions, all that kind of stuff from like across the platforms, because actually you get so much more native data from in the platforms themselves, particularly like TikTok and stuff. And like the way TikTok works from a search perspective, like if you're using a third party platform to get your data for it, you're not going to get the actual things that actually are going to move things, the things that tell you what's really like useful and powerful. So,
Yeah.
uh, interesting what you say, because when I think about social listening, I just think about expensive platforms.
Yeah. Yeah. And but the thing is, like social listening, I always joke around this. It's social listening. You have people that are like more techie in the data on the, on the day to day, but then there's also a piece of social listening where you have to have that strategist hat on. Like you have to be able to look through your feed that you're scrolling on TikTok and be able to know, like, okay, there's a trend with male wellness at the moment. Like they're getting their nails done, they're going to self-care. Okay, what does that mean? Like it's like a third part of your brain that you have to be able to kind of clump a lot of these trends together to be able to present that data. And those are things that the social listening tools provide for you, but not in the extent of being able to clump it all together. So yeah, it's an interesting thing for sure.
Maybe a new role we'll see coming up in the future.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like it.
I'll just come to you, Jasmine.
Yes.
Okay, you mentioned earlier the five C's. So I want to dig into that because you talk about the five C's a lot and how you kind of like frame this. So this is really interesting. So do you want to just tell us what the five C's are first?
So the five C's model, I call this like the five C's of marketing. I swear I'm going to come up with a cool name, but for right now, we're going to call it the five C's of marketing. It's content, it's culture, it's community, creator, and channel. Okay, great. So ultimately, I was thinking about this one day because I was like, okay, people are thinking about social listening very surface level. And right now, there's a rise in so many things. Creators, there's a rise. I added commerce too, but sometimes I leverage it and sometimes I don't. So sometimes it's a five, sometimes it's a six. But I was like, there's a rise in so many of these different areas, and people are really struggling how to leverage social listening for these five C's. So I developed this kind of framework to be able to break it down to people to understand easily and to make it more digestible. And I found that people kind of digest the information around how they can leverage social listening using those five C's. So that's kind of where like it came from.
Interesting. I love it. I think you're right. Let's go into content. How do you think social listening actually informs what a brand should be creating versus just them kind of like repackaging like
Yeah.
trends?
Yeah. So this is how I look at content. I look at content two ways when it comes to like social listening. It's one, it's evaluating and understanding the content that we have. Carousels, paid ads, stories, static, reels, like what in this realm of content, how is it performing? And it's a lot of the time is looking at, is it shareable? Are people saving it? The comment section give you a lot of good stuff. But then also it's a second piece of looking at your competitors, of what they're kind of doing. Like for example, I always go when I was working at PepsiCo and I was working on Mountain Dew, one of the competitors we would really look at is like Nutter Butter and Dr. Pepper. And I'm like, if you would look at the kind of content that they create, it was like so like, I don't want to say low budget, but it was so like lo-fi content that you're like,
Yeah.
who created this? This is like from word out art from 1995. Like, wow, but it was performing so well. Why? Because it was content that you just didn't take seriously. And if you look through the comments, exactly was that it was so many brands just commenting like, Dr. Pepper, what are you doing? Are you okay? Nutter Butter, like, why are you posting this? And it kind of goes to show like, okay, this content is performing and this is what people want. And so I leverage social listening in those kind of ways to know like, okay, this is the content that's performing well, but this is also the content that's, really not performing well. We came out with a new product. People are not really loving like, the promotion that we did behind it. It might be a little bit too salesy, but I'm also noticing that my competitors just came out with a new product or we have to kind of promote some type of retail program. I love how Taco Bell might be doing their content, but not really loving how I'm doing it. So it's looking at content from owned, but also from like a competitor's perspective as well. So that's how I look at social listening from that perspective.
Yeah. I also just you reminded me of a post that you did the other day around when you were talking about some of the metrics and what they mean. And you shared about like You now going to be able to see like who screenshotted your
Yeah,
content.
I'm waiting for
Well,
Instagram to drop that because that is like a game changer if it really, comes to fruition.
yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. Have you got any examples of when maybe like a brand has had to change direction in terms of a campaign or content because of what they have found through insights or their data rather than just like thinking what they know an audience wants?
Yeah, I think one of the great examples is, working at PepsiCo, but also a lot of the brands that I work with, a lot of the time, and goes back into the difference of like social listening and social analytics. A lot of
Yeah.
the time we look at our own content, we're like, man, the engagement, like, month over month did really well. This got this so many shares. But then if you read the comments, the reason why you got so many engagements, people are not loving this. So a lot of the time, it's if we just look at vanity metrics or if we look at our own metrics, we would think all of our content performs great and we're not going to do it. But if we don't take the time to kind of see the response rate behind it, Instagram DMs, how are people resharing it, even the comments, a lot of the time, yes, you might have 500 comments, but like 250 of those are either spam or they hate it. They're asking you, why are you posting this, et
Mm,
cetera, et cetera. So I give that example a lot because it's happened in almost every single one of my roles. You have to kind of look at everything universally. And also, it's educating thought leaders on that because sometimes in the space, when you're kind of talking to a lot of C suite executives, they just want the numbers, but you also have to kind of give them that context of like, yes, this did have 12,000 engagements, but that doesn't necessarily mean it performed well. And this
mm,
is why, because in the comment section, people felt like, why did you use this type of paper? Or why would you use a plastic bottle? You know that we're trying to save the planet. This is terrible. Like, if you're not taking the time to actually about, did this post actually perform well? No, not really. It's the same thing with the example, or this is too funny. What happened? This is the same example around, like, for example, when, Taylor Swift, she just recently announced her, not her engagement, but like her album release. And there was that I saw on LinkedIn where it was a grid that showed all the brands that kind of jumped into it. And this young lady said, are we just jumping into this piece of content because it's Taylor Swift? Or is there any like meaning or emotion behind it? Does your audience skew to Taylor Swift? Did you actually look at the comments? And I took the time to look through some of the comment section and I was like, yeah, people are not really loving this content. They're like, what does this have to do with your brand? Like, you don't even talk about Taylor Swift. You know that we don't really like Taylor Swift like that. So it's those two examples that I just kind of like to use where you have to look at everything holistically to truly value and to truly understand like the performance and how something works. And that's the difference that I like to use between like social listening and actually like metrics and monitoring.
yeah, because like you said, around in terms of a lot of stuff that's happening now, in terms of showing the success rate, is like it's stuff that we don't actually see. It's the stuff that's happening in the DMs. It's stuff that people are having in like Slack channels, WhatsApp groups, things like that. And like, I mean, I always get asked like, how do you track that and stuff? But I suppose that with what you do, that's how you kind of hear those conversations, right? Because you're going into those darker places and listening to it.
You have to create, I think the future of social analytics is really much going into the space of like custom metrics, which is something that I've learned over the years in the different roles that I'm in. Sometimes I'm like, what is this metric? Now it's not about those vanities, impressions and engagements. Those things are cool, but we have to also understand like every platform is changing, the algorithm is changing. What you can measure on TikTok is very different than what you can measure on Instagram. And so if you're going into these spaces of like Instagram or broadcast channels, you kind of need to make your own custom metrics to say like, hey, like this is what success looks like outside of these major platforms. Because to your point, a lot of people are looking for their tribes, but they're not in these bigger platforms. They're going into these
Yeah.
niche spaces to really like talk to the creators that they want to talk to the brands that they really want to talk to. And they're kind of being very shy with their engagements now. So they really want to go into these little like tribes and these little hubs where they feel a lot more safer because social is becoming less and less like a safe space for people.
Okay. And on that note, let's talk about the creator side of the 5 Cs of marketing. I actually like that. You should own that 5 Cs of marketing. Just
I'm going to have to do
yeah,
that.
keep it simple. It's cool. So on the creator side, and obviously you live into this as well. Like, what does social listening kind of reveal about the types of creators or the voices that brands should be aligning with?
Yeah. So let's talk about the creator one because this piece is the one that I don't think people talk about enough. And I truly talk about this from the lens of being a creator because
Yeah.
I've been a creator and I've been managed a couple of times and I have fired them all. And the reason being is one of the things that when you hire on a agency and a talent manager is they do these strategy calls with you. And ultimately they do these strategy calls so they can truly just understand like how is your content best performing? And the role of a talent agency a lot of the time is exactly that, to bring you brand deals. Well, I was thinking about this and I was like, one of the things that talent agents and agencies should be doing with their creators, instead of telling me what my top performing content is, because I know what my top performing content is because I'm in it, I create it all the time, is ask me about the conversations that my followers are having on my platforms. In my comments, yes, but a lot of these creators have Substacks. A lot of these creators are on Reddit. They're on Pinterest. They have broadcast channels. They're in Slacks. They're on Facebook groups. These are spaces that your talent managers have no insight into. Only you do. So if your followers are like, girl, like I posted a video about my blow dryer yesterday, and like in my DMs, people are like, are you going to drop the deets of the blow dryer? Does it break your hair off? Does it do this? This is an insight that I can give back to my talent manager. I can screenshot it. I can send it to them. I'm saying, hey, I got 55 out of
Yeah.
my 100 comments that I got, 60% of them were about this blow dryer. Can you go pitch me to T3 now? Because everyone wants to know that this blow dryer just came from them. No talent agency is doing that at the moment at all whatsoever. So I speak from social listening from that perspective. Yes, it's also about aligning voices and doing, research as far as industry leaders that come in food and beverage or in spirits or in travel and hospitality, but it's also taking the time to look in the unconventional spaces and look in their conversations to say, okay, we might be a food and beverage brand, but there might be an opportunity to tap a wellness creator because I saw that she drinks a lot of kombucha, for example, but she really just takes the time to journal on all of her content. So when I
Yeah.
talk about social listening from the creator space, it's mostly from like that talent agency perspective, but then there's also that second piece as well.
Yeah. And what do you think is the difference between a listener led brief versus like a brand first brief?
I'll say this. I think creative briefs, I always tell people creative briefs was something that I struggle with when I started being a strategist back in the day. I could not get I just did not understand like what an insight was until I understood what an insight was. I think a listening brief is truly that. It's providing examples, like going back to the CeraVe commercial. It's saying, hey, on Reddit, 55% of this audience in this thread believe that, Michael Sarah was the owner of. I think that's a listening brief. I think a brand led brief, a majority of the times, it's just going to include things that are priorities that we really want to talk about that needs to be first. Make sure you include this about the brand, but there's no unique positioning. There's no unique value add. There's probably not going to even be any opportunity for like from some creative spirit for you to kind of create anything. It's very much so brand first, driving conversion. We want to sell. This needs to be an ad versus being something that taking an actual insight that's true that people are saying to say, oh my God, I relate to that. That is so true. I love doing that. How did they know? That where there's more of an emotional tie in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And why are we not doing that more? Because like you said, it's that emotional connection that is what we need right now, particularly when it comes to content and creators. Like, we're getting so fatigued by ads and like content. Like as soon as you kind of feel something, as soon as you feel like it's coming from a place of like meaningful, even though it might be a paid partnership, but as long as they kind of put the effort in and you feel like it's like there's been a two-way dialogue between the brand and the creator, like you just feel different. You feel like you connect to it. So I don't understand how, like, this is all we're talking about now, that emotional connection. So why are brands still not doing this?
I think it's a couple reasons too. I think there's not enough people in the room that understand social. And I'm going to say that because I've been in a lot of rooms where people have years and years of experience and do not understand nothing about social. And it surprises me to
Interesting.
this day. There's a lot of people in the room that don't understand social. Two, people are still confusing social with being a conversion driver. Social can be a conversion driver, but it's not like a first touch point. It's a last touch point. And I get it. That's majority an ask from C-suites and executives is let's get in, creators. We're going to run an ad behind this. We really want to drive sales. The sales come naturally. Like it's the Steve Madden interview. I'm not sure if you saw that. It came out like a while ago, but he was just talking about his brand so effortlessly. And people went out and bought so much Steve Madden. His stock went up just talking about his brand from an emotional, perspective. I think there's just not a lot of people who understand social in the room. And there's a lot of yes men and women in the room and not enough. No, that's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. I truly think that's the reason why, and it kinda sucks because if it's just a win of you against, 10 people in the team, "No, this is gonna work," it kinda sucks, but sometimes it's like, you have to see something not work or see someone else do it to say, "Well, why did we do that?" Well, I tried to tell you that, but so I think that's what the biggest issue is. I think people are still confused on how to leverage social, and I think brands take social entirely way too seriously. The people that are playing and having fun, like the Nutter Butters and the Dr. Peppers and the Duolingos, the people that are just kind of doing social like it's their own and showing up for work like it's another day and don't take it so seriously are the brands that are winning, and the brands that are like planning content 6 months in advance and writing these long-winded creative briefs and these productions are the brands that are like wondering why their content only got 100 likes after they just spent millions of dollars on a campaign. That's my true opinion behind it.
Yeah, I also think if there's any brands out there that are planning content 6 months ahead, then what the hell are you doing right now? It's a
What are you
complete waste of time.
It really is. So I think people don't understand. And then too, I don't think brands understand their audience. I think brands have an aspirational audience and then they have their actual audience. All brands want to talk to Gen Z, but if they look at their data, they might realize that 85% of their audience are boomers and they have no idea. But brands want to talk to Gen Z because they think they're cool and that's what's happening and they're buying power. But they're my boyfriend said the other day, they were like, there's so many other generations, millennials, Gen Y, Gen X, and boomers that are like driving so much power, and Black women are driving so much purchase power, but we don't talk to them because we just think that Gen Z is the end all be all, which no shade to them. They are in some instances, but we are also, I'm a millennial now. We are also driving purchasing power too. We're the ones driving community and all these other things. So I think brands need to like take the time to look in their data and really figure out like how can we just step outside of the box and not take social so seriously.
I love this. Okay, let's talk about culture. And I think this is probably where you own it. And we're going to talk about your newsletter in a bit, because that's obviously
Yeah.
really about the whole culture piece. But when it comes to culture, how does like listening help brands like really stay relevant rather than just like chasing stupid things?
Yeah, I think it goes back to this newsroom that I talk about. I feel like every brand, every agency, big or small, it doesn't have to be a big old show, but I think you need to have some touch point throughout the beginning of the week of what happened in culture. And I say that weekly because when I started doing my newsletter, I was like, I don't know if I could do this weekly because I don't think there's going to be enough tea every week. No, there's more than enough tea every week. There's more than enough. There's more than enough pop culture going around every single week. But brands should be doing some type of touch base like that to really like understand what's going on in culture because what my feed and my algorithm looks like is very different from your feed. And we have a lot of conversations where, did you see such and such? I'm like, no, I didn't see that video. It didn't pop up on my feed. So I think brands need to stop trying to like trend jacking and meme jacking and try to jump on it because they saw someone else do it and truly understand like, okay, how does this fit what I have going on? Because a lot of crisis comes from how we jump into culture. We saw during 2020, with everything that kind of happened with COVID. I think brands need to understand like every moment isn't for you just because it's happening and it's a big moment. If you can't find a way to make it very authentic and true to your brand, then I just say it's better to be silent than not to say anything at all because
Yeah.
a lot of brands get canceled. And once you're canceled, it's very hard for you to kind of like come back. We saw Crackle Barrel with their logo. They just kind of changed it back, but it's kind of like I already saw the first one. Same thing with Jaguar. It's kind of like, I know you want to be cool, but so it's those kind of things where it's like you have to leverage culture to your advantage and also like once again understand your audience. Yes, you may want to talk to a specific audience, but you have to be really real with yourself. Understand our audience skews more this way. I don't think this is the right moment for us. And you have to look at all scenarios. Like if it goes left, look at the keywords, look at how you're writing the copy. How do you think people are going to perceive it? Which I'm sure like American Eagle, they probably didn't think it was going to skew the way it did. They probably thought, oh my God, this is going to be so good. Like and then it ended up being like a big flop. But also
Yeah.
American Eagle probably understands their audience isn't that, but they just also have to understand the culture that we're living in, the moment in time that we're living in. So it's a lot of pressure, and it does take time. It does take time, but you can't just hop on a train immediately. You have to make sure like it goes across all the touch points on your different teams, run it by different audiences in your actual organization. How does this make you feel? Would you be offended by this? Like you have to ask those questions before you just publish and post on something. Because once it's out there, it's out there. And once you take it down, someone's already screenshotted it. Someone's already kind of commented on it. So yeah.
Okay, community, because this is a big word, and I still think community is so misunderstood. And obviously, I'm not going to say, well, actually, I'm going to say it is a buzzword.
Yeah.
And so I suppose for you, like, how does listening really help a brand understand what a community actually wants instead of them just like assuming it?
Yeah. I think community and I also say community and channel kind of go hand in hand because a lot of your community truly lives in niche spaces and they truly live like offline. It's hard to really build a community around, Instagram and TikTok. I think some of it starts there, but a lot of it is more so like offline. And every brand, I think right now, that's their big, like you said, buzzword, their big KPI. I want to build a community around X. And I think the brands that get it right and do it right really just don't take social seriously. Like Rode, like I've never tried this brand a day in my life, but the community they have built, Glossier, I think was one of the OG big
Yeah.
community brands, but they had this system where they just didn't take social too seriously, but they saw an emotional reasoning behind it. Like, I want to make women feel great. I want to make women find their tribe. Majority of the days, we're looking for friends. And so we take the social for doing that, which is why there's like a big gaming community because gaming makes people feel like they're having an out of box experience. They're not in their world. They get a chance to be someone that they're not. Like it's truly aspirational. They have, these parasocial relationships. So I
Yeah.
think community is a big buzzword. And I think social listening allows you to listen to your community to help you build new content, come out with new products, creators that you should be working with, unconventional spaces you should be in, activations and festivals you should be at. Like your community tells you exactly what you need to be putting out there. It's just we don't listen to it, especially for like food and beverage brands, like working at Pepsi. A lot of your community will tell you, can you bring back this flavor? When are you going to do this partnership? If we took the time to actually like write down what every single one of our community members are saying as far as requests, you really have content forever. You have products that you can come out with forever. I just think we just don't listen to them because they're like, well, they're just people. Well, those are the people that are buying your products. Those are the people that are going to recommend you to someone else or say, actually, don't try that because it wasn't good. So I think we just need to kind of listen to our community a little bit more and take it more seriously and don't look at them as just like another comment. No, they're purchase drivers. These are people who are going to make you or break you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually think as well about what you said about them living offline, and it's a bit of like a bugbear for me at the moment in terms of brands like ignoring like their most engaged
Yeah.
fans because they're the community piece. They're the ones that they may not be buying every single product. They may not be able to
Yeah.
afford to buy it, but they're truly invested in your brand. And they're the ones that, there'll be someone will say in a WhatsApp group, have you tried this? And they're like, yes, love it. They might be at a bio class or something, and like again, they're talking about it. And so it's that stuff like they just have to like, yeah, like you said, it's a two-way dialogue. They just have to listen more, find out where they're having these conversations and
Yeah.
just give back to them a little bit more. Cause I think, yeah, there seems to be this thing, particularly in the UK at the moment, where brands are just using the same circle of
Yeah.
creators. And like you can tell that it's just because they've gone, oh, this person worked with this brand. We must now work with them because
Yeah.
they're similar to us, and it's just so frustrating.
Yeah. But brands in the US, I've noticed, big brands, they don't respond back to their comments. When I'm doing audits, I'm like, wait, you haven't responded. And these are big brands. I'm like, community engagement is a key piece in social listening. Like you have to respond and people are sensitive. Let's be honest. Consumers are sensitive, and sometimes when you just respond back to someone, you just don't know how much you maybe made their day. And even me as a creator, I used to be like, I cannot respond back to all these comments. But now I try to take like an hour or two out of my day to respond back because it's just like it's worth it to somebody. Someone might want to listen to or see it, or hey, I needed to hear that. And so if any brand is listening, like respond back to your consumer. Like respond, listen, talk to them. You just never know, where it could lead. And so that's like a whole nother discussion for another day. But it's a key piece in social listening because social listening analysts a lot of time work with community managers to say, hey, what are you seeing, in the comment section? What is a trend that, every time you're responding, are they saying that they hate it, they love it? Do they want more of this? It's also building out like a tone. Are you like brand should be a lot more human, online. Wendy's, I always use them as an example, and everyone uses them as an example, but they're just so like they're funny, they're witty, they're cheeky. They're like, did you say that to me? Like the audacity, but like that's what social is. Like I want to know Wendy's as a friend versus like, just some burger brand. So yeah.
Yeah. And I know you said that channel kind of like goes hand in hand with the community piece, but just from a channel perspective, like what role does like listening play when it comes to choosing the right platform or even the right kind of like format for a message for it to land culturally, do you
Yeah.
think?
I'll say this. I think listening allows you or it tells you where you need to be kind of creating content. I'll say that. I think, yes, we're going to be on these OG channels, which is, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, et cetera, et cetera. But when I'm building out a social media playbook, there's always a section where I have opportunity channels. And this is, where are other spaces that we can play in that you have a community? Threads is such a big playground that people just don't. I mean, the brand playground on Threads is insane. Like, brands just have so much fun in that area. And I think a lot of people from X are migrating over to Threads. Can we play on Pinterest? Brands are coming out with Substack channels. Brands are on LinkedIn. Like, social listening allows you to kind of pivot your social strategy to these new spaces because, like I said, in the community piece, people are starting to become in these really, really small niche spaces. Are you developing a Facebook group? When I worked at Delta Airlines, Facebook groups was a really big thing. That's where a lot
Yeah.
of the conversations are at. Are you building a Slack channel? WhatsApp groups right now are a really big thing. Broadcast channels, even like Reddit threads, which is something that Delta Airlines has as well. These are spaces that social listening allows you to kind of play into, but you don't know that if you're not there kind of listening to what that conversation is. And I think brands, a lot of the time it's, oh, it's resource and not creating content. But if you see a platform that's not working, like, sunset it and go try something else. Pinterest is also a really dope place for brands to play. So I think brands need to kind of step outside of the box and leverage social listening a little bit more to create formats, because you might be a brand that, you're big on storytelling. Okay, then start a Substack channel, like
Yeah.
create a cooking channel. Like, are you a mom brand? Okay, cool. Skims can kind of create a blog for moms, on Substack. So it's ways to play in the unconventional spaces that gets eyes and people say, wow, like, this is interesting, but this is good. Like, I'm going to join this because this is different. A lot of brands also recycle the same content on every platform. So I know that you're going to create this on TikTok. Why would I follow you on Instagram? So I think people just need to kind of leverage social listening a little bit more and monitoring to see, like, okay, what spaces can I play in that might be most valuable for my brand? If it doesn't work, cool, you just pivot your strategy, but you have to like trial and error a little bit with social.
Yeah, and I think this what you just said there about the repurposing thing, like, is I think also that comes back to a little bit about what you said before around like people in social don't fully understand it. Because if you are doing that, then you don't understand that like TikTok needs different content to Instagram.
100%.
And yeah, okay. I want to get into your newsletter for a little bit, scroll and tell. And I suppose I just want to kind of know like what in terms of creating this newsletter, what was the gap in the industry that made you want to create the newsletter? And I suppose the biggest thing for me is like, how do you already said that there's like, you were worried there wasn't going to be enough content, but
Yeah.
there's more than enough. So, how do you decide what makes it into the newsletter? And what do you think that says about where culture is heading?
Yeah. I think the gap for me, it goes back as simple as, what is social listening? And I think that people think social listening is just sentiment and share voice and pulling something from a tool. But I really wanted to kind of leverage as a space. Like, no, social listening is also like listening to culture. As far as what I feel like makes it into the newsletter, I do a lot of like doom scrolling, right? And there's a lot of like tea and pop culture news. And I'm like, okay, great. Someone got engaged. That's cool. Why do I care? A lot of the time when I'm putting something in my newsletter, I try to think about it. What does this mean for a brand? How can they leverage this? So, like, maybe someone else getting engaged isn't a big thing, but we know, Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift have such a chokehold on the industry. We know Love Island conversation, Lord have mercy, is just everywhere and anywhere. Every single brand can tap into this in a really unique way. So when I'm kind of scrolling, that's what I use to kind of put into my newsletters. Another thing that I like to do is, lately I've been reading like a lot of articles. And so usually in my corporate job, my day to day, I take an article and I'll use AI to kind of write cliff notes for me and say, okay, what does this matter? What's going on in the luxury space? So that's what I kind of use in the bottom half of my newsletter, is articles that I read this week and like, what does it matter? So if it's something around like, Gen Z is investing in more Swiss made watches, which I saw the other day, and I'm like, where do they have the money to do this? But they have the money to do this, right? Or, Gen Z is quiet quitting, or Gen Z decides that they don't care for self-care anymore and they're looking for more third spaces. Like, I kind of take those and say and try to find an insight that a brand can leverage. And so that's how I kind of build out the Scroll and Tell newsletter. I just want it to be a digestible and fun, because a lot of time people, doom scrolling is like exhausting.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can spend hours and my brain feels like a waffle. It's just like, I didn't learn anything. Like, what's what's going on? So I wanted to just do it for the people that are like so tired of doom scrolling. And when I say newsroom, something as simple as a newsletter like that, you can put it in a quick email format and just send it out to your team. But teams should be doing something like that just to keep themselves, abreast of what's kind of going on. So that when they're talking to C-suite leaders, or when they're talking to creative directors, or, even their own like strategists, the ideas are kind of there to start like bubbling what they can kind of put together.
Okay, we'll definitely put the newsletter in the
Yeah,
show notes for
yeah.
sure. Jasmine, if you could If you could give marketers any three things that they should be listening for right now that will pay off in like 6 months' time, what do you think they would be?
I think they should be listening to the comments 100%. Like, not just your own comments, look at industry wide comments. So, look at creators that are in your space, look at brands that are in your space, and also like reading articles as well that are in your space as well. Take those and just write interesting facts, write interesting insights that you think you can kind of glean from it. And what an insight is like a whole nother conversation for another day. Two, I think creators is a big space. There's there's so many creators nowadays, but I think it's taking the time to understand what are creators really saying and what are they not saying. I think that was one of your questions. Like, what are they not saying in this space, and try to find that gap for you to kind of play into it. And I think the third thing would be, I think brands should kind of be doing creative sessions. What I mean by that is, don't look at social for a second, but just take the time to understand, like, what do you want to see on social? What makes you laugh? What makes you want to share something? What makes you want to comment on something? What's something that gives you like an emotional reaction? I think that's a question that I don't hear a lot in a lot of creative brainstorms that I'm in, especially for like social and analytics. I never hear that emotional like piece behind it. What makes you want to share something or screenshot something? And so having those like creative sessions and bringing examples to the table, like, what brands are you really loving right now? Why are you loving them? Why did you just follow them? Why did this content make you like giggle, or what made you laugh about it, or what made you give you an ick? Or so I think those are maybe some of the top three things that brands should be doing, right now, that could kind of work out in the next 6 months. Well, four, I'm going to say data. Look at your data, because brands do not look at their data. I'm going to be very honest with you. It's actually mind boggling to me. Brands do not look at their data. They look at impressions and engagements and have a nice day. No, look at your data. Look at your audience data. Like, how are
Yeah.
people like, who's really interacting with your content? Like, what are people sharing? What are people DMing you about? What are your customer service requests about? What is negative commentary around? Like, really like taking the time to like dive into your data and like write it down, like literally diagnose it, like, write it down, look at it quarter over quarter. Maybe it's not a monthly thing, but at least quarter over quarter, and do something with the data. What's the, like, actually have a takeaway behind it? Because most brands look at the reports and they're like, okay, that's great. And they go back to business, but they never leverage the key takeaways that are right there that could make or break a quarter for you. So, yeah.
So true. I love the third one as well, because I actually think now it takes a lot for us. I mean, I think about the way I interact with social. It takes a lot for me to double tap something. Like everything goes to like a DM or like a WhatsApp group and stuff. But you're right. Like I think actually sitting back for a minute, just kind of like turn phones away and just think, actually, what was it? Like what was that connection piece? Or yeah, I think that's a really key thing to take away.
Yeah, for sure. Social is fun, but what people are starting to realize that a lot of things are being taken offline, and social is kind of becoming a supporting channel. There's a lot of like in real life activations. A lot of more brands are at festivals, they're at concerts, they're leveraging creators. Like, there's so many creators at the US Open right now. Like, Grey Goose just did their own Grey Goose Hotel. Like, there's a lot of experiences that are happening off social, and social is that supporting channel. So you really have to kind of like take the reins off and like step out of social for a second and think about, like, how does my brand like come to life? Why would people really want to interact with me more than anyone else? And what are some things that we can do unconventionally? And I keep using that word because I'm like, if brands tapped in like the more unconventional spaces, like, it would just be a whirlwind of things that you could kind of do.
Yeah. Right, Jasmine, I'm going to quickly kind of like make this a real kind of fast paced, quick fire round. You ready? Okay. Scroll or skip. Brand trend jacking a meme within 24 hours.
I'm going to say skip.
The social platform that's the best cultural crystal ball right now.
LinkedIn and Pinterest.
Oh, I love Pinterest. I could talk to you about that for days. Pop culture moment you'd secretly build a whole brand strategy around.
I looked at this question. I'm not going to say the whole thing. Who TF did I marry by Risa Tisa? 100%.
If your agency was a music genre, what would it be?
Afrobeats. Afrobeats.
One whisper you'd give every marketer before they hit publish.
Did you feel something? Did you feel something? Did you feel something from this piece of content? If you did it, do not hit publish.
Love it. Love it. Jasmine, this has been so good. I feel like I could geek out with you so much longer. So maybe we need a part two. Who knows?
Yes, I'm here. And I promise it won't take this long. We'll be here next week.
Okay. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I'm Jazmin Griffith on LinkedIn. My website is queloque, which is QUELOQE .co, or my platforms. I am the Socialista across like Instagram and TikTok.
Brilliant. Well, we'll make sure to include those in the show notes as well. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.
That was another episode of Building Brand Advocacy, the world's top brand building podcast. To find out more about building brand advocacy and how this podcast is part of a bigger plan for our brand building cookbook, then make sure to search for Building Brand Advocacy in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that podcasts are found, and make sure that you click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks to Duel for sponsoring. To find out more, go to www.duel.tech, that's duel.tech. And on behalf of the team here at Building Brand Advocacy, thanks for listening.